Hi, my true crimers, my stories that WTF me, and I figured while it was a rainy, cloudy day, this would be a perfect story. So, without further ado, 1991, Brian Kendall and his little family didn't want to live the big city life anymore. He worked in Baltimore, Maryland. He was a carpenter by trade, and him and his wife Belinda grew up like in the country in West Virginia, and they just absolutely loved it. So they were just tired. And they wanted to move back to West Virginia or somewhere in the area where they grew up in the country. And even though Brian knew it'd be like a multi-hour like trip to go to and from work, he was willing to do it because that's just what he wanted to do. So they finally settle in this cute little cabin feel forest ranch style house in Slanesville, West Virginia. And it was like ranch style single story, so all one level. And so they move in there, and Belinda invites her brother, his wife, and their little 3-year-old Jordan to play with her kids, Blair and Sean. And Jordan's birthday was around the same time Sean's was, I believe. And so they invited them over, had cake and balloons and stuff. And so while they're all over, the kids were like playing in the living room, and then the kids brought all the balloons into the kitchen where where the adults were, where Brian, Belinda, and the brother and the wife were. And all the balloons were like, in the air, and all of a sudden they see one balloon. It's like hanging down from the others, and the string is pulled tight like someone's holding it, but they can't see, but they could clearly see the balloon like someone's holding it. And Jordan had been like talking to somebody that was standing there. And so like all the parents see this, and they're just like, what the and then the balloon gets let go and goes back in the air. And then they're like, Jordan, who are you talking to? And she points, she's 2 or 3 years old. So she's just like, my friend, well, where's your friend? And she points where like nobody was standing. It's him over there. And parents look, and they're like, she's 3. Okay, we're all crazy. Like, there's nothing going on. She's 3. She's probably imaginary friend, like, worst case. So they just let it go, and they do. And so Brian's been working a ton, and he hasn't really had much time like to go out in the to the forest and like in the woods and see. So one day he gets the weekend off, and him and Blair go out and walk around, and they spot this van that's been like lit on fire, it looked like, and it had like a mattress and a bunch of kid toys and stuff, and it was just really creepy van out in the middle of the woods. Looked like it's been burned up. And Brian's like, let's go back, So Brian's at work a lot too after that, since then, in between there. And since he was traveling like multi-hours to and from, like it just got really hard on him, and he wasn't getting much sleep. So he would stay a lot of the times in Maryland and like come back for the weekend. So they only had one car. Belinda was home with the kids, and so they're just trying to get used to their house and whatnot and all this. And Blair, their daughter, has been wanting to sleep outside. Like, they had this little camper trailer on their property, and Blair's been wanting to stay. And so when Brian was gone, Belinda was like, you know what, Blair, go ahead, sleep out there. They had gotten a little puppy, black lab, named Coco. So cute, the family adored. And Belinda was like, okay, Blair, I'll let you go sleep out there on your own. Once I put you in there, you need to lock the door, and Coco's gonna stay with you. She's like, okay. So it's just like a little camper trailer, with a bed, and there's a window by the bed, and it had like a black curtain, and it covered it. And she brought books and her lamp and, just things so she could go sit out there. After she tucked her in, she goes inside, and her and Sean, she puts Sean to bed. He's 3, great sleeper through the night and all this. Well, about like 2 or 3 in the morning, Blair like could hear something like walking outside, and Coco the dog was like growling and barking. And so Blair's like, I wonder if it's my mom, and so she gets up, and Coco is just like, just following where this figure is. And then, and Blair could see like, or hear, and Coco's focused on the window that has the shade over it, and Blair's just, kind of scared, but she's trying to like, it's just my mom, maybe I didn't hear, I don't know. So Blair, she opens the door, she peeks around, and she can see the house, and the house is completely dark, no lights on. So she's like, Mom, and she didn't hear anything. So then she like shuts the door and closes it, and then she finally gets the courage to kind of like peek and sees this man looking in. So she just hides under the covers and is freaked out. And the next morning she goes in, she doesn't tell her mom about it. Like, her mom's like, how was it, And she was just like, I don't want to do that again. I'm good. And okay. Well, that night, I guess Sean, the little boy, was having trouble sleeping that night. He kept waking up screaming and going into the mom's room, waking her up and saying that there's a monster in his room, a man is in his window. And, and she's trying to play it off like, oh, I'm sure it's the forest, probably an animal, a deer, whatever, and so she just brushes it off. And then a couple days go by, and then she has this really vivid dream that somebody's like, they're like, wakes her, and she wakes up in her dream, and it's this little boy in the end of her bed, and he's like, follow me. And so she follows him out into the yard, and there's like a bunch of, how when you were younger, a bunch of like sheets on clothespins all over, and the little boy, and she's trying to find the little boy, and she loses him, can't find him. Well, so then she wakes up, and in real life, and she's like, oh, that was a vivid dream, you know what I mean? And she goes back to sleep. The next morning, she's going to make her bed, and she finds a clothespin that she felt like something was pinching her toe. It was a clothespin, and she's like, oh my God, where'd that come from? Like, there's no way. We don't even have clothespins. So that was really creepy. So then she calls her sister. She's telling her sister about it, and her sister's like, you know what? Just, like, let me take the kids and you go for a walk. Maybe you're just in the house too much. You need to get some airtime. So her sister comes over, grabs the kids, and Belinda just goes for a walk. Well, she stumbles upon like this grave site, and there's 4 little grave sites that are marked, and they were little, so she was like, oh, little kids, so she thought it was really weird. And anyway, so she goes, and a couple of days later, she's telling Brian about it, and Brian's back at work, and she asks her mom if she could borrow the car, and so she goes and borrows the car, and they stop at a gas station. When she's pumping gas, she runs into another lady, and they spark up a conversation, and the lady's lived there for a while, and she's like, oh, where do you live? And Belinda tells her, she's like, oh, do you know the story on your house? And Belinda's like, no. And she's like, apparently there was a fire and a family of 4 died. And Belinda's like, oh, okay, maybe it's just, innocent kids. That dream makes sense. Well, then, and they locked up Coco in the fence in the backyard. And when they came home, Coco was gone. And unfortunately, Coco was lost forever. So somebody had let him out or whatever. And so sad. So, Belinda comes home. She tells Brian about the dream and about the family in the house. And that night she has another dream, and it's the same. The little boy wakes her up. He follows her out. And when she's following him in those curtains or the sheets that are hung on the clothespin, she finds him, and there's this dark figure standing next to him. The boy's scared, and she like falls back. And when she wakes up, she hears her son screaming, and her and Brian